So I wanted to do a comparison video of these two vehicles. We have a first-gen Sequoia and a first-gen Tundra. The Tundra is a 2005, the Sequoia is a 2006. For the purposes of this video, we'll just say they're both 2005. But I wanted to compare these two vehicles for daily driving / overlanding. Obviously, overlanding is very popular right now, and a lot of people are looking for used vehicles that they can get into that pastime and hobby without spending a ton of money. And both of these vehicles are very reliable. Both of them make great daily drivers, and both of them would be well suited for an overlanding setup. Both of these vehicles are completely stock, and so I just wanted to compare them. So both the first gen Sequoia and the first gen Tundra got some pretty good upgrades in the year 2005, and so most of what I'm going to be going over here would only apply to the 2005 and later models of the first gen Sequoia and Tundra. Now for the Tundra, that would be the 2005-2006 model, and for the Sequoia, that would be 2005, 6, and 7 models. So let's go over some of the similarities between these two vehicles. So both of them are powered by the Toyota 4.7 liter V8, and both of them have the same 5-speed transmission. Both of them are body on frame. Both of them have a solid rear axle, and both of them have front independent suspension. So let's talk about some of the differences between these two. So from this angle, you can kind of see right off, the Tundra has a longer wheelbase. The Sequoia's wheelbase is 118 inches, and the Tundra's wheelbase is 140 inches. So that is a difference of about 22 inches in the wheelbase. So in terms of that, the Sequoia has a slightly better breakover angle. Now, by comparison to another very off-road capable Toyota SUV, the 2005 4Runner, 4th gen 4Runner, has a wheelbase of 109, or actually about 110. So between the Sequoia and the 4Runner, there's about an 8-inch difference in wheelbase, but that difference in wheelbase, in the Tundra truck is pretty significant. So what are some other differences between these two? The Tundra has leaf springs in the rear versus coil springs on the Sequoia. The Sequoia also would have an option of rear air suspension. Another difference would be the Sequoia has rear disc brakes and the Tundra has rear drum brakes. So what about towing capacity? Well, the towing capacity on these two is actually very close. Both of these are four-wheel drive models. The Tundra has a 6,500 pound towing capacity, and in the four-wheel drive configuration, the Sequoia has a 6,200 pound towing capacity. So that's a 300 pound difference. Not a big difference there. They also have slightly different payload capacities. When I looked online, both of them actually had the same payload capacities listed, but looking on the actual panels of the truck, there is a little bit of a difference there. And again, that's about a 300 pound difference. I believe the Tundra was somewhere around 1,400 pound payload capacity, and the Sequoia was right around 1,250, but a very small difference within 300 pounds. So that wouldn't probably be a deal breaker either way for either one of these vehicles. One thing that I did find really interesting when I was doing research online is that, as far as I can tell, the Tundra double cab did come with a 3.91 rear end gear, and the Sequoia came with a 410 rear end gear. Now, that was a little bit surprising to me, because I would assume that, the Tundra being a truck, they would be more likely to put the 410 gear in that, with the understanding that trucks are generally used more for towing, and that would probably be a better setup there. That does obviously affect a few things in terms of where your RPM sits at whatever speed you're driving. and some torque figures. The Tundra does seem to be a little bit more responsive when you're on the accelerator, you know, from 0 to 60 or whatever. The Sequoia seems a little bit more sluggish, and they weigh pretty much the same. If I was considering one of these vehicles for overlanding, I would want to know how these two perform off-road, and both of them I would think would be very capable off-road. We may see about that a little bit later. But there are some differences between the two. So one of the biggest differences between the two of these, and this again would only apply to the 2005 and later models of this first generation, is the fact that the Sequoia comes with a torsion center differential, and that center differential can be locked. Now, this doesn't necessarily make the Sequoia more capable off-road. Basically, if you lock that center differential, at that point the trucks would perform exactly the same, but it does provide a little bit more versatility. The Sequoia basically has an all-wheel drive mode, which means that in situations where you have snow, ice, slippery roads, rain, whatever, you can run it on the highway with power being distributed to all four wheels in this all-wheel drive mode, and that would be in four-wheel drive high with the center differential unlocked. So in the Tundra, you can see that we have two buttons for the four-wheel drive controls. The first button on the left can be pressed to put the truck into four-wheel drive high. Now, again, in this truck, it is going to distribute power or cause the front axle and the rear axle to turn at the same speed, distributing power evenly between the two axles. The four-wheel drive low is obviously to engage the low range. The setup on the Sequoia, we can see that we have an additional button there. Now, sometimes in the Tundras, right here, you would see a button for auto LSD. That would be a traction control system that is supposed to perform somewhat like a limited slip differential. But this truck, again, has the torsion center differential. This is the Sequoia. You can see it has the same buttons as the Toyota Tundra, but it has this extra button, and that is to lock the center differential. If I am driving in wet conditions, which we don't have snow and ice here in Florida, but if I was driving in wet conditions and was concerned about traction, I could engage this button right here, and that would put me in 4 high with that center differential unlocked, and I could drive on the highway on regular roads, basically be in all-wheel drive. Now, once I depress this locking center differential button, that locks that center differential and creates the situation where power is being distributed evenly between the front and rear axles. And in that case, you would not want to try to drive that on pavement because you would have binding, and that would not be good. It is an additional feature that you find in the Sequoia that you will not find in the Tundra. Now, the Tundra did have an optional limited slip differential, and this truck is equipped with it. If I get down here real low, you can see that there is a white sticker that says LSD on the back there, and that's an indicator that this truck does have the rear limited slip differential. Now, some of the other Tundras did come with that auto LSD button inside next to the four-wheel drive controls. And I don't know that much about that. My brother has the same truck in a limited edition, and that one does have the auto LSD. And I'm not sure about the performance of the auto LSD versus the real LSD. I would imagine the real LSD is probably a better thing, but it is an option to check for if you're considering one of these trucks. Now, the Sequoia did not have an option for a auto LSD or a limited slip differential, but it does have something pretty significant that the Tundra did not have in this first generation, and that is A-Track. For anybody who does not know about A-Track, it is a traction control system from Toyota. It is a big deal in the modern trucks and SUVs from Toyota. It was a big deal back then, but you hear about it a lot on vehicles such as the 4Runner And because on these older models, they didn't really have a button for it or anything, or it didn't seem to really be that well advertised. It's one of those things that was a great feature, still is a great feature, but one of those things that kind of was under the radar. So basically, the design of the A-Track system, which you will find in the Toyota Land Cruiser, you will find it in the 4Runner of this time period. You will also find it in the Lexus versions of these SUVs. Basically acts as a electronic locker. So basically, if you are in four-wheel drive low, you are sending power, evenly distributing power between the front and rear axles. So if you have slip on one of the wheels on that either front axle or rear axle, it will use the brake to stop that wheel from spinning, therefore shifting power to the other wheel on that axle that has traction. It's a very capable system. It's a system that has had some changes to it, but Toyota still uses this in the current 4Runner and the other Toyota 4x4 vehicles. So the question is, would that A-Track system with the combination of that torsion center differential make this vehicle much more capable than the Toyota Tundra off-road? And does that LSD in the rear of this truck close the gap between these two? These are all great questions I don't know the answer to, but they are things to consider when you're taking a look at these two vehicles. A few other minor things to consider. Tundra does have a little bit better ground clearance, which is pretty apparent from this angle here. The Sequoia does have the running boards on it. You could have running boards on the Tundra. This one just doesn't have them. But the stock ground clearance listed for the Sequoia is 10.9. It's not bad for a full-size SUV, probably better than the competition of the same era. But the ground clearance on the Tundra is listed at 11.6. So a little bit better ground clearance there. Again, you do have that longer breakover angle. So if I was going to overland with these vehicles, they're actually both set up pretty well. Obviously, this Tundra has the shell on it, and that's a nice feature if you are going to be doing some overlanding. This one, I bought this truck this way, but it does have the side window screens on it. So this would be obviously a good place to keep gear, and you could sleep in this very easily. One of the features that both the Sequoia and the double cab Tundras do have is a power rear window that opens up all the way. You can see this window fully retracts down, and again, that would give you great access to the back. If that camper shell had a similar window that would open wider, it would make it very easy to either pass through people or gear or whatever into the cab of the truck. But it's a great feature on these double cab Tundras. This would be a comfortable place to sleep if you don't want to spend $2,000 to $4,000 on a rooftop tent. Although if you want to be a real overlander, everybody knows you need a very expensive rooftop tent. But this provides you with some alternative that saves you some money. Now the Sequoia also has a window that fully retracts. This is great for many reasons. Both vehicles do have that feature on the rear window. I believe this one on the Sequoia, though, is quite a bit larger, just based on the design of the truck. Now looking into the back of the Sequoia, there is a lot of space right back here. The third row of this is currently removed. Those middle rows do tumble forward. With those tumble forward, there is plenty of room to sleep comfortably. Somebody 6 foot tall could sleep in there pretty easily with those front seats tumbled forward. And the floor is pretty much flat. So the last few camping trips that I have done, my wife and I have gone on a couple camping trips. My son and I have gone on a couple camping trips. We have taken the Sequoia. We haven't even bothered taking a tent. If there's just two of us, we sleep in the truck It's very comfortable, and it saves the trouble of having to set up and tear down a tent. That has worked out very well. Of course, having a tailgate is always a great thing if you are camping or doing something like that, and that would be an advantage of the Tundra. Now, in terms of the interior of these two trucks, they are very similar. The Sequoia does have some better standard features. Again, these things are pretty minimal. I believe the Sequoia came standard with power, both driver and passenger seats on all models, at least past 2005. It might have been even on the earlier ones also. And of course, that would be an option in the Limited on the Tundra. This one's an SR5, and it just has manual seats on both sides. Again, not a real big deal. That's just an example of one of the small luxury features that you see on the Sequoia more often. The Sequoia did come standard with a trip computer, which I don't think is even an option on the Tundra. I could be wrong. I like having a trip computer. You know, it has the gas mileage calculation too, so you know, I like to be able to see how terrible my gas mileage is, which is not a strong point on either one of these vehicles, by the way. But yeah, you can just see how you're sucking down fuel and keep track of that, and watch your hard-earned money just get burned away. So that's an awesome feature of the Sequoia. The Sequoia also does have automatic climate control. Again, that's not something that is a real big deal breaker or, you know, selling point either way, but it is like another one of those small, like, luxury type features. The back seats in both of these vehicles are exactly the same, with one small problem. As you can see, this is set up pretty well. Sorry about all my junk here. There's cup holders right here in the center console. That's great. Now in the Sequoia, you have climate control right here. The Sequoia does have dual zone climate control for front and rear. The front passengers are all locked together, so you got to fight over that. The Tundra does have these little vents right here, so that the back passengers can get refreshing air. But as you can see, it's got these cup holders right here, which is fantastic. But it also has cup holders right there, which is even more fantastic. I love cup holders. I think that cup holders just make life so much better. Now, looking at the back seat of the Sequoia, you can see that we also have the same cup holders right here. There's that climate control that I was talking about. So, what about here? We pull this down. What? No cup holders. What was Toyota thinking? I do not understand. This is such a problem. You know, this is America. We need cup holders. We need them everywhere. Take note. Points scored for the Tundra. One option that is much easier to find on the Sequoias than it is on the Tundras is sunroof. Sunroofs were optional on both. I believe all of the Limiteds did come with sunroofs on the Sequoias. SR5s, a lot of them that I see listed do have the sunroof. Not all sunroofs are created equal, and this one is absolutely just massive. Sometimes when we're on off-road trails or whatever, my kids will actually stand right here between the seats, and they will stick their heads out like they're on some kind of safari. Obviously, it's not comparable to the modern glass roofs that go all the way to the back of the vehicle, but for a vehicle in this price point, in this age, it is pretty fantastic. I'll go ahead and open it here. But then, if you want to open it more, you just hit the button again, and it comes back even further. This is a fantastic feature on this vehicle. I just absolutely love it. That combined with the back window being open and all the windows down, you really kind of get the feel that you are just in a very open air vehicle, and it's really just a very special experience. Let's talk about pricing. If you were going to buy one of these, you know, I would expect you could probably find them in similar price ranges. Trucks seem to be in much higher demand in general. You're probably going to pay a little bit more for the Tundra just because trucks are in higher demand. So both of these trucks have about 160,000 miles on them. Both of them run great. So I just did a quick search on Kelley Blue Book this morning for both of these vehicles, 2005 model with 160,000 miles on them. The price spread was a little bit more than I expected. So the Tundra came in right about 9,000 for private party value, and the Sequoia at about 7,500. I did pay about $79 for that Sequoia, and that was probably about a year ago that we bought that. And the Tundra, this specific one, I actually bought it with a blown engine, and we replaced that. So I'm about $7,500 into that truck also. But that was a little bit of a different situation. Most of the listings, actual listings, are running between about $9,000 to $12,000 for this truck right here. So that kind of gives you an idea there of the difference in what you're probably going to pay. So if you don't need a pickup truck, I would say that the Sequoia really does have some very distinct advantages in terms of how much you will pay for it, and obviously the additional features that kind of make it theoretically on paper a little bit more capable off-road. Based on what you're going to pay for it, you could probably take those savings and put them into doing some modifications, whether you do a lift kit or something like that, and make it even more capable. Or with the savings, you can buy your rooftop tent, which everybody needs. Finally, things to look for, things to be aware of. Like I said, both of these trucks run great. I would take them anywhere, and very confident with their reliability. Obviously, a lot of people look for these trucks and they hold their value very well based on the fact that they are very reliable. So if you were going to be buying one, there are a few things to look for, probably more than this, but I'll just do the top three. So the first thing would be rust. These trucks spent some time up north, and both of them do have a fair amount of rust underneath on the frame, and there are a couple areas that are more significant than others. On the Tundras, and I don't think they did it on the Sequoia, but on the Tundras, there was a frame recall on these trucks, and some of them did get their frames replaced, and then others of them just got an underbody or a frame coating put on to help preserve the frame. So that was the thing that Toyota did. That's something to be aware of, and know what you're getting into with that situation. A truck that's severely rusted is probably going to cost you a lot more in the long run, even if you get a great deal on it. The other thing that you want to look for is timing belt history. These trucks are supposed to have their timing belts replaced about every 100,000 miles. As long as you keep up with that, these engines are thought to be just about indestructible. There's a couple examples of these 4.7 liter engines in the Tundras going to 1,000,000 miles. So is a very solid engine. It's probably arguably one of the best engines that Toyota has ever made, but keeping up with that timing belt maintenance is something important. So there's two things I know that will kill this engine, and it is an interference engine, so that means that if the timing belt does break, you could potentially be looking at an engine replacement. The other thing is if you send it swimming. It does not like being a submarine, and it does not like water in the engine. Actually, the reason why this truck was bought with a bad engine is because of the fact that somebody tried to take it swimming, tried to use it as a boat, did not work out very well, and as a result, there was a engine replacement necessary. So don't do that, and keep up with your timing belt, and you're probably going to be just fine. Which can be of some concern is front ball joints. I do believe there was a recall on the Sequoias. I don't know about the Tundra for ball joints pretty early on in the life of these first generation trucks. I am actually taking in this Tundra next week to get new ball joints put on, but that's an area that you probably don't want to neglect to make sure that those are good. Obviously, a failure there could be a big problem and be a safety issue. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, you know, there are a few other minor things. The rear windows on the Sequoias, and I don't know about the Tundras. I haven't really seen that so much, but The rear windows, the rear door hatches can have some issues. There's a few other minor issues, but for the most part, I would say those are the big three to look out for. And obviously good service records is always a great thing. That's about it. If you have any additional thoughts or comments or anything, please comment below. Really appreciate you watching the video. In our next video, we're going to take these two trucks off-road and compare them like that. So stay tuned. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.